Okay, in our last video we talked about combining two different exposure lengths in Pixinsight, and that worked. It looked fine, but I actually like to do this in Photoshop better because the luminance masking tools in Photoshop make it extremely easy to blend different exposure lengths. I don't bother with the high dynamic range Pro, the HDR Pro. I've never used that. I've never had any luck with it. We're gonna try to go fast because this could drag out if we're not careful. So I'm going to assume you know how to take deep sky astrophotography pictures and stack them, with their calibration frames, the flats, bias, darks, whatever. And I've done that already, and I've got two different exposure lengths here. I've got 2 hours of integration at 4 minutes, kind of overexposed, but whatever. And I've got like 20 minutes worth of 5-second exposures to get the trapezium here. And I want to combine the two. We've got all the dust here, but the trapezium is completely blown out. And we've got the trapezium in here, but there's no dust. That's just black. I could stretch that as hard as I wanted, and I would never get anything out of there. It's just black. I mean, I get a little something, but not enough. Not enough to be worthwhile. So we're going to go ahead and show you how to blend these together. The first thing we need to do is get them both into the same image. So we'll take our move tool up here on the left, grab the short exposure, drag it over to the long exposure. Go over to opacity, turn it down, and then we'll take our short exposure and line it up with our long exposure. And you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to just move it 1 pixel at a time. You want to get it as close as possible. That looks pretty good. Turn our opacity back up. Okay, now the next step is going to be to stretch a little bit out of these images. I'm going to go ahead and crop this to get rid of the junk on the sides here. And there. So now we've got both exposure levels overlaid on top of each other. Now the next step is going to be to stretch each image individually, because we need to stretch the histogram out, reasonably, so that when we do the combine, you get the maximum amount of data from each level into the finished image. Because if it's still all compressed right here, we'll lose a lot of information if we try to combine them at this stage. So to do that, we're going to start using luminance layers. We'll stretch the longer exposure first. You go to channels, and in this, when you've got the channels tab open, there are a series of hotkeys and actions you can do to quickly make really detailed masks. And we won't need to mask off the shadows at first. We're just going to worry about masking off highlights. So what we do is hit Control A to select the entire image. Then if we hover over the RGB channel and hold down Control Alt, you'll see a minus sign appear next to your hand. You click on the RGB, and that will subtract a 50%, an evenly balanced luminance channel from the entire selection. So if we then go and hit Save Selection as Channel, you'll see it'll make a nice mask of the entire thing. And with that selection active, we can go ahead and start stretching, and it will protect those highlights and help stretch the data out. We'll set the black point over there. I mean, that already looks miles better. And we can stretch the histogram out a little bit until we start to see it blow up. you know, that's probably good enough to start with. And you can see that with that luminance mask on, we're not blowing the stars out any worse than we already did. Now here's another really nice shortcut on Windows. Control Alt Shift and E, and it will make another image of what is it'll make a layer of everything that's visible. So now we've just got a layer that is the combination of that mask and that adjustment. And next we do the same thing to the 4 or 5 second exposures. It's the same process over again. I already made one because I had to do a different cut. But anyways, like I said, Control A to select all, and then hold down Control Alt to subtract that, and that will give you your luminance mask for that channel, or for that level of exposure. And then we can go to Levels and stretch this to bring this up quite a bit. Now we just want to do it until we start blowing those stars out. That's probably pretty good right there. Now again, with the Control Shift Alt E to make a layer out of that. Now we've got our 2 exposure levels all stretched and ready to go. Okay, now this is where the magic starts. We combine these by using the multiply layer blend mode. So we set the short exposure to multiply, and that blends everything together. Now it may not look like much, but all that shadow data from this longer exposure is in there. And I can show you by just applying a quick stretch. You can see that all those shadows are in there. We just need to stretch them out without blowing up the trapezium. And that takes a little bit of elbow grease, but if you stick with me, we will get through this. Now, before we actually combine these channels, you'll notice the coloring is bad around the stars, and that's because the places that are completely blown out in the long exposure are going to mess with our color here. So we need to mask our long exposure before we combine them. So we'll make the long exposure the visible layer. Go back to channels, and we'll create a luminance mask again. Hit Control A to select all, Control minus. Now that's our selection. We'll make a channel out of that, but we're going to adjust this because we want all the shadow to come through. So we don't. This isn't pure white out here. It will block a lot of the shadow detail. So we'll go to Image, Adjustment, Levels, and really drop down your white point to make all of that pure white out there. Because we only want to stop the blown out highlights from getting through. That's probably good right there. You don't want too hard of an edge. So now just hold down the Control button and select that alpha layer that we just created. Now that will create a mask, an appropriate mask for this. So we select the long exposure layer, then hit Add Vector Mask, and that selection will become a mask that will block all the blown out regions of this photo. Now when we go and do that multiply, those color problems are gone, and the mask is letting through all that shadow detail still. So we've still got all that detail we can pull out of the shadows, and all of the all of the highlights are masked off so they're not causing color problems around there. Watch, we'll disable layer mask and you can see how it messes up the color there. Okay, so now this image here, we're still at it. We still are working with a 32-bit image, and this contains all of our data. Everything's visible that we want to be visible. This is a multiply. Okay, so we do Shift Control Alt E again, and now this layer up here is the combined image, masked and multiplied, and everything we need is in this image. And now it's just a matter of, you know, standard image processing. So yeah, we just start masking and stretching like normal. Get our layer selected, select all, minus. We'll go ahead and start making adjustment layers with luminance masks as we go. You can see every time I do that, control click, the 50% selection gets bigger and bigger as the image starts to brighten up. Now it's starting to get pretty big now, so I'm going to click it a couple of times to start spreading out that the region I'm brightening up. And you know, you got to be careful here. You can't just mindlessly stretch and stretch and stretch, because it's easy to get carried away and start blowing something up and not be able to backtrack. Now it's starting to get pretty close for the histogram stretches. Maybe we'll try to do one more here. Control A, then Control Alt. Click to subtract. Really try to block off. Now we'll see. That's the mask we're using right there. It's a, you know, we're blocking off quite a bit now. Yeah, I don't think we want to stretch the histogram any further than that. That's good. Now I'm going to go ahead and let's make another layer of that image, and I'm going to go ahead and convert it to 16-bit now. And from here, it's a matter of, you know, just careful processing. Let's try. You want to make a midtones mask. Let's create one like this. Now let's invert the selection and create one like this. Now we've got a shadows and a highlights. Now we'll select all And what we want to do is subtract the shadows and then subtract the highlights. And you'll get a warning there. Don't worry about it. And then create a mask out of that. And that is a midtones mask. Not a very good one. Let me try that again without clicking so many times. Just go ahead and delete these two. We'll just do a regular one. We'll go Control click for the 50%. Create this. Select inverse. Create that. Okay. Now we've got these two. Now we select all, Control A, and subtract these shadows from these highlights. How does that one look? Okay, that looks much better. Now we just do Control and click on this one, and that makes that our active mask. Then we can go to layers, and now if we do adjustments, we'll just be adjusting the midtones. And that can be a good way to make your final little stretches there. That's looking pretty good. Then we can start with we'll go Control, just click on that again, and do we'll just start doing like contrast, saturation, stuff like that. Could not complete the brightness contrast command because of a program error. What on earth? Try it again. Okay. Program error, I guess. Can we do it here? Yeah, we're doing it here. Okay. So I just hold down Control and click on the masks, and we can just keep using that mask again and again. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but it works for me. So yeah, right now I'm just using the midtones mask to adjust the mid-range stuff here. But yeah, that's that. I mean, that's looking pretty good. I'll do this and try to bring up our shadows a little more here. Too much. Just a touch. A little dab will do ya. Excuse me. Alright, I don't think we need to touch that anymore. If I do, I will mess it up, and that's good enough to have gotten the point across, I think. Clip the black down a little bit. And it's a little bit blue. Let's clip the blue a little bit. That looks good, I think. Okay, we'll call that done. You know what? Not yet. These stars have a really hard edge. I'm going to show you how to fix this up really quick. Go to, well, let's Control-Alt-Shift-E. Make a new layer. And go to Select, Color Range, and just click on the bright stars, and it will select them. Now we'll modify and expand by 5 pixels, and now just apply a quick little Gaussian blur there to get rid of those hard edges on the stars. And there we have it. We'll call that done.